Ladies, gents, how's it going? Random Gary back once again. The real name's Gary Prout. For those of you who don't know, I spent 12 years in the British Army. I received a significant Gallantry Award, a Tier 2 Gallantry Award, one below the Victoria Cross. So I've been reviewing these videos with a bit of a different slant. Not only am I looking at the tactics, the techniques employed within these incidents, but also the impact, the mindset of gallantry recipients whenever they receive one of these awards. Now, I normally watch them with a beer, but tonight's a little bit different. Tonight I got some whiskey, a Lagavulin 16. So if you're not into whiskey and you're thinking, go try Lagavulin, please don't. You need to know what you're getting. It's a big old peaty dram. So yeah, start off with something a little more simple, maybe a blend, and then move on to this kind of stuff. So tonight we're checking out Dakota Meyer, who is what I understand to be a really well-known Marine. He was extremely young, I understand, whenever he received his award. I think I can remember some aspects in and around it, but tonight we're gonna check it out together. We're gonna check in and see exactly what he did to be so befitting of this award. Hope you enjoy it.
Tonight, CBS News correspondent David Martin on assignment for 60 Minutes.
I have never seen the like. That's what a helicopter pilot who had watched a 21-year-old Marine stave off a Taliban ambush that threatened to overrun his unit told us.
21 man.
The Marine was Dakota Meyer, a Kentucky farm boy who just this past Thursday received the nation's highest military award, the Medal of Honor, from President Obama at the White House. Meyer was on a mission in the Ganjgal Valley of Afghanistan,
where
he
that
repeatedly ran a gauntlet of enemy fire in a desperate effort to save his fellow Marines. Dakota Meyer will tell that story tonight, but there is much more to it than his almost insane bravery.
Always is.
This was an operation which went terribly wrong. So wrong that 2 Army officers were issued career-ending letters of reprimand. Ooh. It's a story as old as combat. When a warrior's leaders let him down, he has nothing to fall back on but his own courage.
Wow, okay, so what have I heard so far? 2 people lost their careers because of it. There needs to be huge fuck up. So one, fair play for holding those people to account. I imagine that if that was career ending, it was pretty justified. And 2, fair play to the Army, actually, because you're talking about Army actions impacting on Marines. Now, I know that we shouldn't, but it's very easy to judge the separate branches according to this year. So yeah, fair one. And shall I say? I will. My favorite saying to my young recruits was, sometimes you just gotta pee with the D you've got. Sometimes you just gotta urinate with the piece that you got. And what's that saying is you know what? There's never gonna be a good case scenario. There's never gonna be a let's make a plan and everything's gonna go brilliantly. You just gotta deal with whatever you've got in front of you and make it work. So it sounds like this is exactly what Dakota did. It's gonna be a heavy one, this one, isn't it?
Dakota Meyer will tell you he was just doing his job. But when you see and hear what he did, you too may say, I have never seen the like.
The story will continue in a moment.
Continue now. Get on with it.
Dakota Meyer grew up shooting game
minutes,
on this farm in Greensburg, Kentucky, and can hit a squirrel at 750 yards.
That's good going.
But it wasn't his marksmanship that earned him the Medal of Honor.
That's serious.
It was his astonishing courage.
Did you think you were going to die?
I didn't think I was going to die. I knew I was.
You knew you were going to die?
I knew I was going to die.
This relates to one of my absolute heroes, Dick Winters. He said there's 3 stages of combat stress. Stage 1 is, I'm too good. I've received loads of training. I'm brilliant at my job. It'll never happen to me. Stage 2 was, I've seen some of my buddies getting hurt, some of my buddies getting wounded. It might be me someday. Stage 3 was, I'm next. He said at stage 3 you went one of 2 ways. You either were resigned to the fact that, yes, I'm going to die. I'm going to take as many of those bad guys with me as I can. Or, I want nothing to do with this. I don't want to be here. War is not for me. I'm putting Dakota in the bracket of, I'm going to take as many of you bad guys with me as I absolutely can.
The battle took place in this remote valley deep in enemy
Wow, okay.
territory in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan.
You're exposed there,
Meyer
aren't
ran
you?
a gauntlet of fire not once but 5 times, with insurgents shooting down on him from 3 sides.
So why are you going in there?
There was U.S. troops getting shot at, and those are your brothers.
4 Marines were trapped in the village of Ganjgal after a patrol of 9 Americans, both Marines and Army soldiers, and 45 Afghan military was ambushed. Afterwards, the Army's Center for Lessons Learned produced this animated recreation of what happened.
So 9 US troops along with 45 Afghanis. So we would call this like an embedded team, OMLT, as we used to call it, which was like the mentoring and liaison kind of team and learning team. So they would actually get embedded with the local platoon of Afghani troops and go out. It was an absolute lottery. Sometimes you would get decent people to work with. Other times you ended up with absolute moonbeams who just wanted to smoke pot all day and go on very simple patrols. So I'm hoping these Afghan troops were pretty decent.
The patrol set out for what was supposed to be a friendly meeting with village elders. Rocky terrain forced them to get out of their armored vehicles and move in on foot.
So you're seeing there, they're in between a high feature, they're out on their foot, they're being focused into a little place, they're being channeled into a point. And quite often where you're channeled, where it's easy to predict where you're going to go, that is what we would classify as a VP, a vulnerable point. And quite often there will either be IDs or there will be a team overwatching in order to ambush you in this kind of area. It's not a nice place to be. So I'm thinking potential IED or potential shoot.
Walking up toward the village, what happens next?
Right at daylight, they open fire on them. The enemy starts raining down. They had mortars, rockets, rocket-propelled grenades, and small arms fire.
Complex ambush. Prepared. You don't just set up mortars and just drop them on the position. You need to know where you're going to aim them. You need to know the direction, the distance. Actually, whenever you're in hills, you've got an issue called slope. So as you fire up in the air, because there's a mountain in the way, what would normally go through the ground will actually hit the mountain side. So instead of aiming for the point where you wanted to impact if it was on flat ground, you actually have to change your point of aim. Therefore, if these rounds were on target in the right place, it means that they had time to prepare it. The locals informed them that the Americans were coming. Complex because of the multiple different weapon systems. So you got small arms, you got mortars, you got rockets, and you got RPGs. And I'm imagining whenever he's saying rockets, he means 105 Katyusha rocket systems, those old Russian systems that are a bit of a point and kind of fire. Quite a large warhead, a bigger splinter than an RPG, and quite high velocity as well, so they can be accurate over those kind of ranges.
We're waiting for you.
They were.
This was an ambush.
Oh, it was. We were set up.
With an estimated 100 to 150 enemy fighters dug in on the high ground above them, the Marines called for artillery fire from a nearby base. The first rounds missed.
This is classic example of slope here. Even if you give them the most accurate grid, depending on what kind of map data and what even the weather's doing at that time, those rounds might not land on target, and it's very hard to adjust. For example, if you give a left correction and one round is landing on this side of the ridge, and you give a left correction, whenever that left correction is applied, it will be either amplified or minified depending on that slope that you're sitting facing. It is so complex to be able to adjust artillery in these kind of situations, in these really steep hills. Therefore, it is sometimes easier and more effective to use attack helicopter or fixed wing aircraft.
So First Lieutenant Michael Johnson, one of the 4 Marines trapped inside the village, radioed new coordinates of the enemy positions. But the commanders in the operations center back at the base refused to fire.
They didn't.
Shit call. Absolutely shit call. It is not. I hope I'm right in saying this here. I know the Americans have a slightly different system where they relay the requirement to the command post, and the command post then decides how the artillery is employed. In the British military, the observer is the originator, and the guns have to do, as long as it's authorized, the guns have to do exactly what that originator says, strictly in accordance with the originator. That is our aim of fire discipline. So whatever I tell them to do, they need to do it. If there is a safety issue, it is up to me to, first of all, justify the decision, that kind of safety. And then secondly, for me to then convince the command post that I'm applying fire here. It's in a safe manner. This is my methods of mitigation. So it's a shit one for that command post to turn around and say, no, you need to support the troops on the ground. They're the people who are in the shit. If they deem it necessary, so be it.
Denied it. The Army denied it and told him it was too close to the village. And he said, too close to the village. And the last words I heard him say was, if you don't give me these rounds right now, I'm going to die.
Did he get the artillery fire?
No, he didn't. The response was basically, try your best.
2009. So I was there in 2009. And I want to be careful about how I say this, so I'm not going to talk about details. I'm not going to talk about distances. I'm not going to talk about the different weapon systems and how far. However, at this point, there was a real emphasis on what we call courageous restraint. We had to restrain using weapon systems that had area effects. We had to limit our use of these near civilian and urban kind of areas. And what would we class as an urban area? So any kind of dwelling, irrespective of if we knew there were people there or not, any kind of urban dwelling was classed as one of these areas. So I'm seeing both sides of the argument here. It's a pretty shitty one, and I probably, what I'm thinking is I know there's 150 enemy troops. I'm wondering, does the command post, the people who are making that call on the artillery, do they know just how much of a shit situation these Marines are in? And I would hazard a guess and say that they have no idea it's 150 enemy. Therefore, the need to use artillery doesn't seem as reasonable to them. They're looking at the rules in and around courageous restraint. They're applying the rules as they've been informed of them, but they aren't informed of the picture. I hope that makes sense. I'm not trying to justify their decision. I'm just trying to paint the light on what was the reality in Afghanistan in 2009, and that was the reality: courageous restraint.
Investigation conducted after the battle determined that 2 Army officers making those decisions in the operations center that day were clearly negligent. The actions of key leaders in the command center, the report said, were inadequate and ineffective, contributing directly to the loss of life which ensued.
Yep.
Because of what the report calls poor performance, in an atmosphere of complacency, the operations center just did not realize how bad the situation was until it was too late.
Yep.
You can't sugarcoat it.
Now retired, Colonel Richard Hooker conducted that investigation.
The 2 principal officers that were named in the investigation failed to discharge their duties in a responsible way, in a way that the Army and the country has a right to expect them to behave.
Among the findings, 2 Kiowa helicopters armed with rockets and machine guns were minutes away from Ganjgal, but never made it into the battle.
They were on another mission, but they were close at hand.
How far away in terms of minutes?
I would estimate 5 to 10 minutes.
Allocation of assets on the battlefield. You need to supply your troops in the greatest need with the most suitable assets. As I've said already, artillery was not adequate for that job. It's too complex a weapon system to effectively control in that kind of environment. Attack helicopter is absolutely beautiful. The only reason I'm not being hugely critical here is I've no idea what those Kiowas were doing on the other mission. If they were doing nothing, shame on you. Absolute shame on you for not allocating those to the troops who needed it.
Flight time.
Those helicopters actually broke away from that other mission and headed toward Ganjgal, but were recalled because the request had not gone through proper channels. The troops under fire didn't know that. They were told the helicopters would be there in 15 minutes.
Up to this point, it's been 15 minutes and no air support yet. So they requested again, and they said 15 more minutes.
So 15, now you're at 30 minutes on air.
At 30 minutes, and you know, I'm hearing the radio traffic, and now it's starting to get worse. Gunny Kennefic, I believe it was, come across the radio and said, "I can't shoot back because I'm pinned down. They're shooting at me from the house, and it's so close."
Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Kennefic was one of the 4 trapped Marines.
It's 15 minutes are starting to add up.
They are, yeah. We're at almost 45 minutes, no air support. I believe that the enemy started seeing, well, they're not getting what they need. You know, let's take advantage of this opportunity.
I'm starting to see why you said this one would be a tough watch. 15 minutes is a long time. You expect to get that support and to fight for those 15 minutes. You might be a little bit more liberal with your application of fire. You might be returning higher rates because you're with the belief of, you know what, support's on its way, this helos are coming. If you do not have an accurate time of how long that aircraft's going to take, or you do not dish it up. You inform people that we're requesting it. It's in process. We will let you know a flipping time that you can check in with those helos, and you actually don't check them in. You don't say that you've got them until they're arriving on the doorstep and it's almost there for those troops on the ground to be able to speak to it. They are planning their battle. They are sorting out their quick battle orders according to what you're telling them on the radio. And if you're telling them absolute shit, if you're making up numbers, you are setting them up to fail. There is no excuse for that.
Dakota Meyer, one of the youngest, lowest-ranking Marines on the battlefield, took charge.
We had to do something, and we requested to bring a truck in. We were told no. You know, all your guys are in there getting lit up, and you want to be in there helping them. And we waited about 5 minutes maybe, and we requested again. We were told no. So we requested again about 2 minutes later, and we were told no again. So I looked at Staff Sergeant Rodriguez Chavez and I said, we're going in.
Staff Sergeant Juan Rodriguez Chavez, who had received the Navy Cross, the nation's second highest honor, drove an armored truck toward the village, while Meyer manned the gun turret.
It felt like the whole valley turned on this truck.
You were it.
It was like, we're it. Like, here comes the big target. You know, the enemy was just, they were just running right at you, you know, at the truck.
So this is not just raining fire down. Now they're trying to swarm the truck?
It's just like a killing fest for them, I think.
How close were rounds coming to you when you were doing this?
The rounds were hitting the turret, and I just kept moving back left and right, left and right. There was so much fire, it sounded like static over top of your head. I was just waiting for one of those rounds to hit me in the face.
How close is the enemy getting to you?
15, 20 meters.
Close.
Yep.
As depicted in the Army animation, dead and wounded Afghan soldiers who had been part of the patrol lay scattered along the valley floor.
I would run and try to assist as many Afghans as I could.
So you get out of the truck.
I'm out of the truck on foot.
So you're out in the open in the killing zone.
I am.
Meyer and Rodriguez Chavez would drive the dead and wounded out of the valley and come back to run the gauntlet of fire again and again, still trying to get to the 4 Marines trapped in the village.
You know, you either get them out alive or you die trying. If you didn't die trying, you didn't try hard enough.
When the Marines...
What an absolute quote. What an absolute quote. Death is nature's way of telling you failed.
Radios fell silent. Army Captain Will Swenson, who was pinned down just outside the village, took up the call for fire.
Captain Swenson probably made 9 or 10 different calls for fire before he probably gave up in frustration.
Does he say, look, I'm not kidding, I really need this fire?
Yeah, the evidence says he was very, very insistent in his calls for help. No question about that.
How long after the battle begins do the first helicopters show up?
It was probably an hour and 45 minutes before
Actually
the
taking
first
a piss.
helicopters come on station.
Helicopters were finally overhead as Dakota Meyer tried to blast his way through the valley to the stranded Marines.
We interviewed a number of pilots who were there that day, and several of them stopped in mid-sentence, unable to finish their description of.
They're sitting listening to this shit going on. Believe me, pilots want to get involved. They want to get in there. They want to do the job to their best of their ability. They are their weapons to target experts. They know exactly what their platforms can achieve and how simple it would be for them to get in and do this here. Yet some absolute numpty is sat on a radio in a command post thinking they know better what's happening on the ground, and they're overruling not just the troops on the ground but also the troops in the sky who can provide that support. I feel so sorry for them. They are battle winning assets. They can have an immediate effect like that, and they are absolutely being prevented from achieving that. That must be horrific for them, and they have my thoughts, because this must have been awful.
Of Meyer's actions that day was they just didn't have the words to describe it.
When the helicopters showed up, did that put an end to the ambush?
No, it didn't solve the problem, but it certainly was a great help to the soldiers and Marines and Afghans that were fighting on the ground, enabled them to move about the battlefield a little better.
With Marine Lieutenant Adamola Fabayo, who would also receive the Navy Cross, manning the machine gun, Swenson and Meyer drove deeper into the valley.
Me and Captain Swenson kept driving this unarmored truck to this valley, and rounds are going everywhere through it.
They're going through?
Like, you got both windows down. You could hear them coming, whizzing through.
A helicopter finally spotted the 4 Marines, but there was too much gunfire to land.
Well, they started to try to land, and they couldn't. They were going to get shot down.
I say this all the time, in particular about the American Pedro call signs. You guys are incredible. Irrespective of what was happening on the ground, we always had a Pedro call sign who was willing to put wheels down as close to our guys in order to get them out. Fair play to you. Sounded like you dug out deep here today. The situation was too shitty, but yeah. Gotta try as hard as you can. Death is nature's way of telling you you failed.
So I just took off running, and it was probably the longest run of my life. I felt like I couldn't move fast enough because it's wide open. Rounds are hitting everywhere around me. I jumped into this trench, and when I did, I landed on Gunnery Sergeant Johnson.
And he was...
He was dead.
They were all dead. First Lieutenant Michael Johnson, Sergeant Edwin Johnson, Sergeant Aaron Kennefick, and Corpsman James Doc Layton. It was now 6 hours into the battle that would also take the lives of 8 Afghan soldiers.
6.
If we had gotten supporting aviation on station early in the fight, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation.
5 minutes is long. Half an hour is an excruciating amount of time. 4 people. 4 troops. On their own. 6 hours. Hope those people didn't just lose their careers. I hope they need to serve time for negligence. This is horrific. It's horrific. Words are failing me right now.
That's my firm belief.
Would those Americans be alive today?
Yeah, you can't say with any certainty, but the chances are, in my opinion, yes, they would have been.
They had no
So you
chance.
just spent the last 6 hours risking, which is not the right word, your life, throwing away your life to try to get to those guys.
I didn't like this reporter in the last one, but what he just said is bang on. Dakota was giving away his life at every opportunity. And it's only because he's a very lucky bloke that he's still here today. I don't care how good you are. If you are operating at that level for 6 hours, you have to get lucky to still be alive. he was giving his life away. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. I know I gave you grief last time, but you're bang on there.
Yeah.
And they're dead.
You know, you feel nothing but like being a failure, you know?
That you couldn't get to them in time.
Yeah.
You realize that what you did was extraordinary?
No, I don't. It would have been extraordinary if I'd have brought him out alive. That would have been extraordinary.
That was not your doing. You did everything that you possibly could. The fact they were killed it's no bearing on his actions on that day. It's tough. It's not one you're going to celebrate. But I think you can be resigned to the fact that you did absolutely everything within your power to try to bring those guys home. And ultimately, even though they weren't breathing, still brought them home. And I think that is the really important thing to remember here. It was not your call, but you brought them home.
He retrieved my son's body and
Susan Price is the mother of Aaron Kennefick. Several months after she buried her son, she received a copy of Hooker's investigation, known in military parlance as a 15-6.
when I read the 15-6 for the very first time, it actually put me in the hospital for a week.
Price and Charlene Westbrook, whose husband was grievously wounded on another part of the battlefield, have spent thousands of dollars of their own money campaigning to draw attention to what happened at Ganjgal.
We both lost a huge part of our hearts to this mission that was clearly caused by negligence.
Sergeant Kenneth Westbrook died at Walter Reed Hospital, but lived long enough to tell his wife what happened.
He told me that we were surrounded, we were ambushed, and we called for help. No one came. They kept telling us 15 minutes, and no one showed. And we were just sitting ducks.
As recommended by the investigation, letters of reprimand were issued to the captain who was in charge of the watch in the
Letter
operations
of
center
reprimand.
and to
Please
the
tell
major
me.
who was absent from the center at critical points.
Please tell me that's
The
not.
Army has not released their names.
How do you equate a piece of paper,
Reprimand.
a reprimand, to human life?
These letters of reprimand are just clearly slaps on the wrists. These officers need to be court-martialed.
What would you say to them?
I think to be the object of an official investigation which results in a general officer letter of reprimand and end your career for most professional officers is about the most profound kind of thing that can happen to you. It means professional disgrace and ruin.
Susan Price and Charlene Westbrook were not at the White House on Thursday to see the president award Dakota Meyer the Medal of Honor. Will Swenson, who quit the Army, was. He, too, was recommended for the Medal of Honor. But as if there weren't enough negligence to tarnish this battle, the paperwork got lost and had to be started all over again. As for Ganjgal, it still belongs to the Taliban.
It's been 2 years since that operation. And it's still not safe to go into Ganjgal.
It's not.
For all that loss of life, for all your courage, what was gained?
Shit question. Shit question. It's not all about gain. It's not about controlling the ground. It's about doing your job as professionally and effectively as possible. I do not sit down and think about the places where I fought now. I think about what were my actions. Were they appropriate? Were they professional? Did we achieve what we were put there to achieve? Who gives a shit what state it's in now, as long as we give the locals the opportunity and the chance to live their life as they seem fit? I don't care. I really don't care what state it's in now. The locals decide that.
Nothing. Nothing, but at the end of the day, we still did our job. We were still fighting.
triggered. What is it you Americans call it? I am being a Karen right now, but an absolute justified Karen. I don't want to ask you to like this video. You know what? If you're gonna comment below, please comment about Dakota's actions, about the actions of the troops on that day. Let's not give any face time to those who absolutely failed them. Let's think about the pilots who had to sit back and listen to that. Let's think about the families who were involved in this. This is an absolute failing of decent leadership for the troops on the ground. But let's focus on how these lads fought and what they did for one another, irrespective of branch and irrespective of all of that other shite. Ladies, gents, 750 viewers. I think it's superb, but I just want to tell more people these stories. So I'm almost there. Like, is telling 750 people about this enough? No. Share the story. Get the word out. Let's use subject matter experts to pull apart these absolute idiots that are sending our guys into trouble. I'm gonna finish it off there. Hope you took something away from this. Hope I give you something new, and I'll see you again very soon. I'm away to pour another glass. All the best now. I'll see you soon.